the Vice President has to be unequivocally congratulated. He has spoken for 1 billion Indians. And I think it is now time for the Prime Minister to stand up for them. And I'm sure he would. Look, let me come to the brass tacks. The equivalence drawn by the Supreme Court in posing the loaded question whether non-Hindus have been appointed to Hindu boards is misplaced at multiple levels. It is embarrassing to point out the ignorance of the judges. Number one, non-Hindus are routinely appointed not only to temple boards but also to the Temple Precinct Development Trust. For example, Tirupati and Tarakeshwar, V. Anita and Farid Hakim. Number two, communists, non-Hindus, anti-Hindus are routinely appointed to Kerala's temple boards. For heaven's sake, the communist government is literally running these temple boards. Three, because the state controls more than 110,000 temples and their land, it follows that the state administrative machinery administers it, and by corollary, the state administration includes non-Hindu administrators. Four, Hindu trusts and boards do not claim, take over, encroach or adjudicate on non-Hindu property or land. They simply administer Hindu property and land. Waqf board, on the other hand, encroaches, routinely claims non-Muslim property whose rightful ownership is then adjudicated by Muslims. How on earth is that acceptable or not a conflict of interest or equivalent to the functioning of a Hindu board? Five, for 30 years, the Supreme Court never found illegal an act that gave Muslims the power to claim any property as their own, using work by user, that allowed them to annex any land housing a functional mosque. But today, it sits to adjudicate whether a version that curtails these draconian excesses is illegal or not. For 30 years, the Supreme Court never found unsecular an act that gave Muslims the power to use thousands of crores of taxpayers' money to conduct survey of religious property. For 30 years, the Supreme Court never found unjust that a parallel extrajudicial tribunal decided with finality the fate of the aggrieved whose land and property was usurped. But today, it sits to adjudicate whether a version that curtails these draconian excesses is illegal or not. Six, crucially, why doesn't the Supreme Court, that drew an equivalence, albeit false, between Muslim and Hindu-run boards, have the guts to, in the interest of equivalence, ask the state to control mosques as it does temples? Have the guts to order Muslim code bills like Hindu code bills? Have the guts to order Muslim schools to have EWS quota like the Hindu schools? And claim this country is not a banana republic, Rahul. The fact is, we are being guilt-tripped into giving away our property, our schools, our temples, our rights, and finally our faith. Rahul, I don't want the state, especially one that calls itself secular, controlling or dictating the composition of any private or quasi-religious board. Yes. And I have nothing against the Waqf board. Why should anyone? Countless boards exist. The problem for me always was the Waqf app that weaponized the board. Yeah. I wanted Waqf app abrogated, but as they say, 30 seconds. Perfect is the enemy of good. The next best option at least is an act that amends as many draconian clauses. Also, if Islamists, many on the panel, have usurped 20 lakh acres on the last 10 years through Waqf Act, at least their annexation would be ebbed through the Amendment Act. What's the solution? 10 seconds. I think if the state cannot remove discriminatory acts, it should reward those discriminated with equivalent discriminatory act. So keep the Waqf Act, bring a Sanatan Act, keep state control of Hindu temples, bring mosques under state control, keep RT EWS quota for Hindu schools, bring Muslim schools under it.
It's not the first time, viewers.
Discrimination against Hindus, reward them with it.